The morning sun cast long shadows across the steps of the downtown courthouse as Alex Rodriguez checked his watch for the third time. He was running late, and his younger brother's hearing was scheduled to start in just 20 minutes. Alex had promised to be there as a character witness, and he never broke his promises. Not to his family, not to his fellow soldiers, and certainly not to his little brother who was counting on him. Alex looked nothing like what people might expect from a decorated Navy SEAL. He wasn't wearing his dress uniform with its rows of ribbons and medals. Instead, he had on a simple gray hoodie, dark jeans, and worn sneakers. His military ID was tucked safely in his wallet, along with the court document his brother's lawyer had given him weeks ago. What he didn't know was that a clerical error had left his name off the official witness list. Walking through the courthouse entrance, Alex noticed the usual hustle and bustle of people dealing with legal matters. Lawyers in expensive suits rushed past families dressed in their Sunday best. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they were going, except for a few confused-looking individuals clutching papers and looking around nervously. The metal detector line moved slowly, and Alex tapped his foot impatiently. Behind him, an elderly woman fumbled with her purse, trying to remove all the metal objects before her turn. In front of him, a businessman argued quietly on his phone about some contract dispute. It was just another typical day at the courthouse, or so it seemed. When Alex finally reached the metal detector, Deputy Officer Williams looked up from his paperwork. Williams had been working courthouse security for over 15 years, and he prided himself on being able to spot troublemakers from a mile away. He saw a tall, athletic black man in casual clothes approaching with confident steps, and immediately straightened up in his chair. "Good morning, sir. Purpose of your visit today?" Williams asked in his standard professional tone. "I'm here to testify as a character witness for my brother's case." "Traffic violation hearing in courtroom 3. Alex replied, reaching for his wallet to show his identification. Williams glanced at his computer screen, scrolling through the day's witness list. He checked once, then twice, but couldn't find Alex's name anywhere. This was unusual, but not unheard of. Sometimes people got confused about dates or courtrooms. "What's your brother's name?" Williams asked, his tone becoming slightly more formal. Alex provided the information, watching as Williams typed and clicked through various screens. The officer's frown deepened with each passing second, and Alex could feel his own stress level rising. Time was ticking away, and he really needed to get upstairs. "Sir, I'm not seeing your name on any witness list for today. Are you sure you have the right date?" Williams asked, looking up with a skeptical expression. Alex pulled out the folded paper his brother's lawyer had given him. "Look, here's the document. It clearly says today's date and time. I'm supposed to be there in 15 minutes. Williams examined the paper, noting that it looked official enough, but something still didn't feel right to him. In his experience, people who showed up without proper documentation often had ulterior motives. Maybe this guy was trying to sneak into a courtroom to intimidate witnesses or cause problems for an ex-girlfriend. It wouldn't be the first time. "This document doesn't automatically put you on the witness list, sir. I need to verify this with the court clerk before I can let you through," Williams explained, reaching for his phone. Alex felt his patience wearing thin. He respected law enforcement and understood the need for security, but this was getting ridiculous. His brother was probably sitting in that courtroom right now, wondering where his character witness was. "Officer, with all due respect, I served 3 tours overseas defending this country. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to help my little brother with his traffic ticket," Alex said, his voice remaining calm but firm. The mention of military service should have been a positive thing, but Williams had heard that story before too. Plenty of people claimed to be veterans when they wanted special treatment or sympathy. Without a military ID visible or some other proof, it was just another story as far as he was concerned. "Sir, I appreciate your claimed service, but I still need to follow protocol. Please step aside while I make this call," Williams instructed, gesturing toward a small waiting area near the entrance. Alex felt a familiar surge of frustration, the same feeling he'd experienced countless times when people looked at him and made assumptions. He'd dealt with this kind of treatment before, both in civilian life and, unfortunately, sometimes even in the military. But today was different. Today, his brother was counting on him. Look, I understand you're doing your job, but my brother's hearing starts in 10 minutes. Can't you just call upstairs and verify with the court clerk while I wait up there? I promise you I'm not going anywhere except courtroom 3, Alex said, trying to find a reasonable compromise. Williams was starting to feel like the situation was getting out of hand. The man in front of him was becoming more insistent, and other people in line were beginning to notice the holdup. In Williams' mind, legitimate witnesses didn't argue with security. They cooperated fully and waited patiently for verification. Sir, I need you to calm down and wait while I handle this properly. Getting agitated isn't going to speed up the process, Williams said, his own voice taking on a sharper edge. Alex took a deep breath, reminding himself of the discipline that had gotten him through SEAL training and multiple combat deployments. He wasn't getting agitated, he was just trying to solve a problem efficiently. But he could see that Williams was interpreting his assertiveness as aggression. Other people in the security line were starting to murmur and check their watches. A few pulled out their phones, not to make calls, but to start recording what was clearly becoming a tense situation. The atmosphere in the courthouse lobby was shifting from routine boredom to uncomfortable anticipation. Williams made his phone call, but the court clerk was busy and couldn't take his call immediately. He left a message and hung up, looking back at Alex with growing suspicion. In his experience, when situations like this dragged on, they usually ended badly. Sir, I'm going to need you to have a seat over there while we wait for a callback. This could take a few minutes, Williams announced. Alex checked his watch again. 5 minutes until his brother's hearing. He thought about all the times he'd had to make split-second decisions in combat situations, weighing risks and benefits in the span of heartbeats. Right now, every instinct told him to find another way to get upstairs, but his training also taught him to respect chain of command and follow proper procedures. The waiting area felt like a spotlight as Alex sat down, aware that other people were watching him with curiosity and some with barely concealed judgment. He pulled out his phone and tried calling his brother's lawyer, but the call went straight to voicemail. Lawyers always turn their phones off once court sessions began. This was exactly the kind of situation that Alex had hoped to avoid by arriving early. He'd seen too many good people get tangled up in bureaucratic nonsense when all they were trying to do was the right thing. But now, he was living it himself, watching precious minutes tick away while his brother sat in a courtroom wondering where his promised support had gone. The stage was set for what would become a life-changing encounter, though neither Alex nor Deputy Williams had any idea just how dramatically this simple misunderstanding was about to escalate. The minutes crawled by like hours as Alex sat in the waiting area, watching the clock on his phone tick closer to his brother's hearing time. 2 minutes past the scheduled start. His leg bounced nervously as he tried calling his brother's lawyer again, but still got voicemail. The courthouse lobby buzzed with its usual activity, but Alex felt like he was trapped in a bubble of frustrating inaction. Deputy Williams kept glancing over at him while processing other visitors through the metal detector. The court clerk still hadn't called back, and Williams was starting to feel the pressure of the growing line behind him. Several people had already asked why the holdup was taking so long, and his supervisor would definitely hear about it if the security checkpoint backed up too much. Alex stood up and walked back toward the security desk. He'd made a decision. Even if it meant missing the first few minutes of his brother's hearing, he needed to get this resolved right now. His brother would understand, and the lawyer could probably stall for a few minutes if needed. Officer Williams, Alex said, reading the name tag as he approached. I really need to get upstairs. My brother's hearing has already started, and he's counting on me being there. Can we please figure out another way to verify this? Williams looked up from helping an elderly man empty his pockets. The determination in Alex's voice made him pause. This wasn't going away, and honestly, Williams was starting to feel a bit bad about the situation. The guy seemed genuine enough, and that court document did look official. Look, let me try calling upstairs one more time, Williams said, reaching for his phone again. But if I can't reach anyone, you're going to have to wait until after the hearing and sort this out with the clerk's office directly. Alex felt his heart sink. After the hearing would be too late. His brother needed character witnesses to speak. Before the judge made a decision, not after. All those stories Alex had planned to share about his brother's community service work, his steady job, his efforts to turn his life around after some teenage mistakes, none of that would matter if he couldn't get into that courtroom. The phone rang several times before going to voicemail again. Williams hung up with a frustrated sigh. He was genuinely trying to help now, but the system wasn't cooperating. "I'm sorry, sir. I really am." But without confirmation from upstairs. "My hands are tied," Williams said, and he actually meant it. Alex ran his hand over his face, feeling the weight of letting his family down. This was his little brother they were talking about, the same kid who used to wait up for him when he came home on leave, who wrote him letters every week during his deployments, who had struggled with some bad decisions as a teenager, but was really trying to make things right. "Officer, please. I know this looks strange, but I'm telling you the truth. I'm a Navy SEAL. I served in Afghanistan and Iraq. I've never been arrested, never been in trouble with the law. I just want to help my brother," Alex said, his voice carrying a note of desperation that hadn't been there before. Something in Alex's tone made Williams look at him more carefully. The way he stood, the way he carried himself, even the way he spoke, there was something different about this guy. Williams had processed thousands of people through this checkpoint, and most of the troublemakers had a certain look about them. This man didn't fit that pattern, but Williams also knew that courthouse security wasn't just about stopping obvious criminals. Sometimes the most dangerous situations came from people who seemed perfectly normal until they snapped under pressure. And right now, this man was clearly under a lot of pressure. "Sir, I believe you might be telling the truth. I really do, but I still have to follow procedures. For everyone's safety, including yours," Williams explained. Alex felt something snap inside him. Not anger, exactly, but a deep frustration with a system that seemed designed to make simple things complicated. Here he was, a man who had literally risked his life for his country multiple times, being treated like a potential threat because of a clerical error. "You know what? This is ridiculous," Alex said, his voice rising just enough to catch the attention of nearby people. "I have the court document right here. I have my driver's license. I'm telling you exactly where I need to go and why. What more do you need?" The change in Alex's tone sent a ripple through the courthouse lobby. A few lawyers stopped their conversations to look over. A woman with her teenage son moved slightly further away from the security area. Someone near the back pulled out their phone and started recording. Williams felt his own stress level spike. In his experience, when people started raising their voices in the courthouse, things could go south very quickly. He'd seen family disputes turn violent, people lose control when faced with legal consequences, and generally calm individuals become unpredictable when pushed to their limits. "Sir, I'm going to need you to lower your voice and calm down," Williams said, standing up from his chair. At 6 feet tall, he was used to his physical presence helping to de-escalate situations, but Alex wasn't intimidated. If anything, being told to calm down when he was already being as reasonable as possible just made the situation feel more unfair. He'd spent years in high-stress combat situations where staying calm meant the difference between life and death. This wasn't about being calm, this was about being heard. "I am calm," Alex said firmly, "but I'm also frustrated. My brother is sitting in a courtroom right now, probably wondering why the one person who promised to be there for him isn't showing up. And I'm stuck down here because of a computer glitch." More people were starting to notice the exchange now. The normal chatter of the courthouse lobby had quieted somewhat as attention focused on the security checkpoint. Williams could feel eyes on him, and he knew his supervisor would expect him to handle this professionally and efficiently. The problem was, Williams wasn't entirely sure what handling it looked like anymore. He genuinely wanted to help this man get to his brother's hearing, but he also had rules to follow, and those rules existed for good reasons, even if they sometimes created situations like this one. "Look," Williams said, trying a different approach. "What if I escort you upstairs personally? I can verify your story with the court clerk in person, and if everything checks out, you can go right into the courtroom. Alex felt a moment of hope, but then Williams continued. But first, I'm going to need to search you and, as a precaution, I'll need to put you in restraints during the escort. It's standard protocol for unverified individuals. The word restraints hit Alex like a physical blow. Handcuffs. Williams was talking about handcuffing him like a common criminal, parading him through the courthouse in front of everyone, just to get to a hearing where he was supposed to testify about his brother's good character. You want to handcuff me? For trying to attend my brother's court hearing? Alex asked, his voice carrying a tone of disbelief that was audible throughout the lobby. Several more phones came out, people sensing that they were about to witness something significant. The teenage son with his mother whispered, "Mom, are you recording this?" A lawyer in an expensive suit paused his phone call to watch what was happening. Williams realized he was at a crossroads. He could back down and just let this man go upstairs, hoping nothing bad would happen, or he could follow protocol, even though it meant escalating a situation that was already tense. His training kicked in. When in doubt, follow procedure. It might not always be popular, but it kept people safe and kept him out of trouble with his supervisors. Sir, it's just a precaution. Once we verify your identity upstairs, I'll remove them immediately, Williams said, pulling out his handcuffs. The sight of the handcuffs caused an audible reaction from the growing crowd of onlookers. Someone gasped. Another person said, "Oh, no, he's not really going to." A few people stepped back, as if expecting the situation to explode into violence. Alex stared at the handcuffs, then at Williams, then at the crowd of people watching him. This was really happening. He was about to be handcuffed and marched through a courthouse like a criminal, all because he tried to keep a promise to his little brother. For a moment, everything seemed frozen in time. Then Alex slowly turned around and put his hands behind his back. "Fine," he said quietly. "Let's get this over with." The click of the handcuffs echoed through the suddenly silent courthouse lobby like a gunshot. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut seemed to echo through the entire courthouse lobby. Alex stood perfectly still, his hands secured behind his back, while Deputy Williams took hold of his arm to begin the escort upstairs. The crowd that had gathered was completely silent now, watching this surreal scene unfold before their eyes. Alex kept his head high as they started walking toward the elevators. Years of military training had taught him how to maintain his dignity even in the worst circumstances. He'd been in actual combat zones that felt less intense than this moment, walking through a courthouse in handcuffs while dozens of strangers recorded him on their phones. Williams felt the weight of everyone's stares as he guided Alex through the lobby. Part of him wondered if he was making the right choice, but he'd committed to this course of action now. The best thing to do was get upstairs quickly, verify this man's story, and hopefully end this whole situation before it got any worse. Behind them, the whispered conversation started up again. "Did you see that?" someone asked. "What do you think he did?" Another person wondered aloud. A few people were already posting videos to social media, adding their own commentary about what they thought they'd just witnessed. As they reached the elevator, Alex noticed a commotion coming from one of the courtrooms on the second floor. Voices were getting louder, and he could hear what sounded like an argument breaking out. Williams noticed it too, and pressed the elevator button more urgently. The last thing he needed was to deal with two separate incidents at the same time. The elevator doors opened just as Judge Patricia Thompson emerged from courtroom 3, looking frustrated and slightly out of breath. She'd been dealing with the scheduling nightmare all morning, witnesses not showing up, lawyers running late, and now some kind of disturbance in the lobby that her bailiff had just mentioned over the radio. Judge Thompson had been on the bench for over 20 years, and she prided herself on running an efficient courtroom. But today was testing her patience. She'd already had to postpone one hearing because a key witness was missing, and now she was hearing reports of some kind of security incident downstairs. As she walked toward the elevator, intending to go to her chambers and review the afternoon's cases, she stopped dead in her tracks. Walking toward her was Deputy Williams, escorting a handcuffed black man in casual clothes. But something about the man's face was familiar. Judge Thompson squinted, trying to place where she'd seen him before. The man walked with perfect posture despite being restrained, and there was something about his bearing that seemed almost military. Then it hit her like a lightning bolt. 3 months ago, she'd attended a Veterans Appreciation dinner at the local community center. As an honorary guest, she'd been seated at the head table when they'd honored several local military heroes. One of them had been a Navy SEAL who'd recently received the Medal of Honor for extraordinary courage during a mission in Afghanistan. The same face that had been on the front page of the local newspaper. The same man who'd been featured in a television interview about veteran services. The same person who'd spoken so eloquently about serving his country and helping other veterans adjust to civilian life. "Wait," Judge Thompson said, her voice cutting through the buzz of lobby conversation. "Stop right there." Williams froze, still holding Alex's arm. Everyone in the lobby turned to look at the judge, wondering what was happening now. The elevator doors closed behind them with a soft ding, but nobody moved to press the button again. Judge Thompson walked closer, studying Alex's face more carefully. She was almost certain now, but she needed to be absolutely sure before she said anything. The implications of what she was seeing were too serious to get wrong. "What is your name, son?" she asked Alex directly, her voice carrying the authority that came from decades of courtroom experience. Alex looked up at her, recognizing the judge's robes, but not sure who she was or why she was asking. "Alex Rodriguez, Your Honor," he replied. Respectfully, the judge's eyes widened. That was definitely the name from the newspaper article. But she needed one more confirmation. "And you served in the military?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. Navy SEALs. 3 tours overseas," Alex answered, wondering where this conversation was going. Judge Thompson felt her heart rate spike. She turned to Williams, with an expression that made the deputy officer immediately nervous. "Deputy Williams, do you have any idea who you just handcuffed?" she asked, her voice deadly quiet. Williams looked between the judge and Alex, suddenly feeling like he made a terrible mistake, but not understanding what it was yet. He said he was here to testify for his brother, but his name wasn't on the witness list," and Williams started to explain, but Judge Thompson held up her hand to stop him. "This man," she said, her voice rising so that everyone in the lobby could hear clearly, "is Staff Sergeant Alex Rodriguez. He was awarded the Medal of Honor by the President of the United States 3 months ago for single-handedly saving his entire unit during an enemy ambush in Afghanistan." The lobby went completely silent. People who had been whispering stopped mid-sentence. Even the clicking of phone cameras seemed to pause as everyone processed what the judge had just said. Williams felt like the ground had just disappeared beneath his feet. The Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration in the country. He'd just handcuffed a genuine American hero for trying to attend his brother's court hearing. Judge Thompson continued, her voice filled with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "He risked his life to carry 3 wounded soldiers to safety under heavy enemy fire. He then held off an enemy assault for over an hour until reinforcements arrived. The citation says his actions saved the lives of 12 American servicemen." Alex stood quietly, still in handcuffs, feeling embarrassed by the attention. He'd never been comfortable with the hero label. As far as he was concerned, he'd just done his job. The same thing any of his fellow SEALs would have done in that situation. But the crowd in the lobby was having a very different reaction. The woman with her teenage son covered her mouth with her hands. The businessman who'd been on his phone earlier was staring in shock. Several people looked down at their phones, probably wondering if they should delete the videos they just recorded. Williams fumbled for his keys, his hands shaking slightly as he tried to unlock the handcuffs. "Sir, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. This is all just a big misunderstanding." Judge Thompson wasn't finished. She turned to address the crowd that had gathered, her voice carrying clearly throughout the lobby. "This man has served his country with extraordinary courage and distinction. He's been featured in national news stories about veteran advocacy and community service. And today, he was just trying to help his younger brother with a simple traffic violation case." The defense attorney, who had been frantically searching for his missing witness, suddenly appeared at the edge of the crowd. He'd heard the commotion and come downstairs to investigate, hoping against hope that his absent character witness might somehow be involved. "Alex," the lawyer called out, pushing through the crowd. "There you are. The judge has been asking for you. We've been holding the hearing, waiting for you to show up." The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place for everyone watching. This wasn't some random person trying to sneak into the courthouse. This was exactly who he'd claimed to be all along, a military hero trying to keep his promise to his little brother. Williams finally got the handcuffs off, his face red with embarrassment and shame. "Sir, I don't know what to say. I was just following protocol." But Alex rubbed his wrists where the handcuffs had been, looking around at all the faces staring at him. Phones were still recording, people were still whispering, and he could feel the weight of this moment settling on his shoulders. He realized that what happened next would be remembered by everyone in this courthouse for a very long time. How he handled this situation would define not just his own character, but potentially influence how people thought about veterans, about law enforcement, and about the importance of giving people the benefit of the doubt. The entire courthouse lobby held its breath, waiting to see what Alex Rodriguez would do next. For a moment that seemed to stretch on forever, Alex stood in the center of the courthouse lobby, surrounded by dozens of strangers who were all staring at him with expressions ranging from shock to embarrassment to admiration. The red marks on his wrists from the handcuffs were still visible, and he could feel the weight of every single phone camera pointed in his direction. Deputy Williams stood frozen beside him, the handcuffs still dangling from his hand like evidence of a mistake he desperately wished he could undo. His face had gone pale, and Alex could see genuine distress in the officer's eyes. This wasn't a bad person, Alex realized. This was just someone who had been doing his job the way he thought it should be done. Judge Thompson stepped closer to Alex, her expression softening from the stern authority she'd shown moments before. She'd seen a lot of injustices in her courtroom over the years, but watching a Medal of Honor recipient get handcuffed for trying to help his family felt particularly wrong. "Mr. Rodriguez," she said quietly so that only Alex and Williams could hear, "I cannot express how sorry I am that this happened to you. This is not how we treat our heroes, and it's certainly not how we treat anyone who comes to our courthouse seeking justice." Alex looked at the judge, then at Deputy Williams, then at all the faces around him. He could see shame, curiosity, anger, and confusion written across their expressions. Some people were clearly upset on his behalf. Others seemed embarrassed to have witnessed what felt like a terrible mistake. A few were still recording, probably planning to post this story online within minutes. The defense attorney pushed through the crowd more urgently now, briefcase in hand and looking frazzled from dealing with the delayed hearing upstairs. "Alex, thank goodness," the lawyer said, slightly out of breath. "Your brother has been asking about you every 5 minutes. The judge up there has been very patient, but we really need to get this hearing back on track." Hearing about his brother snapped Alex back to the reason he'd come here in the first place. All of this drama, all of these stares and cameras and awkward apologies, none of it mattered as much as keeping his promise to his little brother. But before he could respond, Judge Thompson stepped forward again. "Actually," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the lobby, "I think everyone here needs to understand what just happened. And I think Mr. Rodriguez deserves to have his story told properly." She turned to face the crowd that had gathered, many of whom were still holding up their phones. Her years of commanding courtroom attention served her well as every conversation stopped and all eyes focused on her. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've just witnessed is exactly the kind of situation that happens when we make assumptions about people based on how they look or how they're dressed," she began, her voice taking on the tone she used when addressing juries. Alex felt uncomfortable with the attention, but he understood that Judge Thompson was trying to turn this embarrassing situation into something positive. Still, he wished he could just disappear upstairs and focus on helping his brother. Williams shifted nervously beside him, clearly dreading whatever the judge was about to say next. "This man," Judge Thompson continued, gesturing toward Alex, "served 3 combat tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. He's been awarded the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, and our nation's highest military honor, the Medal of Honor. The citation reads that he single-handedly held off enemy forces for over an hour while evacuating wounded American soldiers. A murmur went through the crowd as people began to understand the full scope of what had just happened. But today, the judge continued, he was treated like a criminal suspect simply for trying to keep a promise to his younger brother. A promise to appear as a character witness in a simple traffic violation case. Alex watched the faces around him change as the judge spoke. The woman with her teenage son was wiping tears from her eyes. The businessman who'd been on his phone earlier had put it away completely and was listening intently. Even some of the lawyers who'd been rushing through the lobby had stopped to hear what was being said. Judge Thompson turned to Williams, but her expression wasn't angry anymore. It was sad. Deputy Williams is a good officer who is following the procedures he's been trained to follow. But this situation shows us that sometimes our procedures aren't enough. Sometimes we need to look deeper, listen more carefully, and remember that every person who walks through these doors has a story we don't know. Williams looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. He'd been doing courthouse security for 15 years without any major incidents, and now he'd probably be known forever as the guy who handcuffed a Medal of Honor recipient. Alex could see the officer's distress, and something in his military training kicked in. He'd been in leadership positions where good soldiers made honest mistakes under pressure, and he'd learned that how you handled those moments often mattered more than the mistakes themselves. Your Honor, Alex said, his voice calm and clear. If I may say something, the judge nodded, and Alex turned to address the crowd directly. I appreciate what Judge Thompson just said, but I want everyone here to understand something important. Deputy Williams was doing his job exactly the way he was trained to do it. When someone shows up without proper documentation, when their name isn't on the official list, security officers have to be careful. Williams looked up at Alex with surprise. He'd expected anger, maybe even a lawsuit. He hadn't expected understanding. Alex continued, I've been in situations overseas where split-second decisions meant the difference between life and death. I know what it's like to have to make judgment calls with incomplete information. Deputy Williams didn't know who I was, and, honestly, he had no reason to take my word for it just because I said I was a veteran. Several people in the crowd exchanged glances, clearly not expecting this response. The real problem here, Alex said, isn't that Deputy Williams followed procedures. The problem is that a simple clerical error almost kept me from helping my brother. The problem is that we live in a world where people have to prove they belong in places they have every right to be. Judge Thompson nodded approvingly. This was exactly the kind of mature response she'd hoped for, but hadn't dared to expect. But here's what I want everyone to take away from this, Alex continued, looking directly into one of the phone cameras. Deputy Williams apologized sincerely when he realized his mistake. Judge Thompson stood up for what was right when she saw injustice, and all of you stopped what you were doing to pay attention when someone needed help. He paused, looking around at all the faces watching him. That tells me that despite this misunderstanding, despite the assumptions and the confusion, we're all still capable of doing better. We're all still capable of seeing each other as human beings instead of just making quick judgments. The lobby was completely quiet now. Even the usual courthouse background noise seemed to have stopped. Williams stepped forward, his voice shaky but determined. Mr. Rodriguez, I want you to know that I'm going to recommend changes to our verification procedures. What happened here today should never happen to anyone, veteran or civilian. You handled this with more grace than I deserved. Alex extended his hand to Williams, who shook it gratefully. We all make mistakes, Deputy. What matters is what we learn from them. Judge Thompson watched this exchange with something approaching amazement. In all her years on the bench, she'd rarely seen someone respond to injustice with such dignity and wisdom. The defense attorney cleared his throat gently. Alex, I hate to interrupt this moment, but your brother is still waiting upstairs. The judge up there has been incredibly patient, but we really should get going. Alex nodded, suddenly remembering why he'd come here in the first place. All of this had started because he'd promised to help his little brother, and that promise was still the most important thing on his mind. As he started toward the elevator with his lawyer, the crowd began to disperse, but the conversations were different now. People were talking quietly about what they'd witnessed, about assumptions and second chances, about the importance of listening before judging. Judge Thompson called after him, "Mr. Rodriguez, after your brother's hearing, would you consider speaking to our courthouse staff about today? I think we could all benefit from hearing more of your perspective." Alex turned back and smiled. "I'd be honored, Your Honor. But first, I have a promise to keep." As the elevator doors closed behind Alex and his lawyer, the courthouse lobby slowly returned to its normal rhythm. But everyone who had been there knew they'd witnessed something special. They'd seen how grace under pressure could transform a moment of conflict into an opportunity for understanding. And Deputy Williams knew he'd just learned one of the most important lessons of his career from the very person he'd wronged. The elevator ride to the third floor felt like the calmest moment Alex had experienced all day. His lawyer, David Chen, kept glancing at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Alex, I have to ask, are you okay? What just happened down there was?" David paused, searching for the right words. "It was a misunderstanding that got out of hand," Alex replied simply. "But it's over now. Let's focus on helping Tommy." When the elevator doors opened, they hurried down the hallway toward courtroom 3. Through the small window in the door, Alex could see his younger brother Tommy sitting at the defendant's table, nervously adjusting his tie and checking his watch. The sight made Alex's chest tighten with guilt. Tommy had been waiting for over 30 minutes, probably wondering if his big brother had forgotten about him. They slipped into the courtroom as quietly as possible. Tommy's face lit up with relief when he saw Alex, and he mouthed, "Thank you." Across the room, the judge, an older woman with kind eyes, noticed the new arrival and nodded approvingly. "Your Honor," David said, standing up, "I apologize for the delay. My character witness, Alex Rodriguez, is now present and ready to testify." As Alex made his way to the witness stand, he caught snippets of whispered conversations from people in the gallery who had apparently heard about the incident downstairs. Word traveled fast in a courthouse, especially when it involved a Medal of Honor recipient getting handcuffed in the lobby, but Alex pushed all of that out of his mind. Right now, only one thing mattered: helping Tommy get a fair outcome for his traffic violation. His little brother had made some mistakes as a teenager, but he'd been working hard to turn his life around. He had a steady job at a local auto repair shop, was taking night classes at the community college, and had been volunteering at a youth center on weekends. "Please state your name and relationship to the defendant," the judge requested. "Alex Rodriguez. Tommy is my younger brother." The judge's eyebrows raised slightly when she heard the name. News of the lobby incident had already reached her chambers through the courthouse grapevine. For the next 15 minutes, Alex spoke about his brother with the same passion he'd once used to motivate his SEAL team. He talked about Tommy's work ethic, his commitment to helping kids in the neighborhood stay out of trouble, and his genuine remorse for the poor choices he'd made in the past. "Your Honor," Alex concluded, "my brother isn't perfect. Neither am I, but I've seen him grow from a confused teenager into a responsible young man who cares about his community. Everyone deserves a second chance to prove they're better than their worst moment." The prosecutor, who had been prepared to push for the maximum penalty, found herself reconsidering. There was something about Alex's testimony that felt completely genuine. This wasn't just family loyalty, this was one person vouching for another's character based on real evidence of change. Tommy wiped tears from his eyes as his brother spoke. He'd always looked up to Alex, even during the years when Alex was deployed overseas. Having his war hero brother believe in him enough to show up and speak on his behalf meant everything. The judge deliberated for only a few minutes before announcing her decision. Tommy would receive community service instead of jail time, along with the fine and mandatory driver's education classes. It was a fair outcome that gave him a chance to continue building his new life. As they left the courtroom, Tommy grabbed his brother in a tight hug. "Alex, I don't know how to thank you. I heard about what happened downstairs. I'm so sorry you went through that because of me." "Hey," Alex said, holding his brother by the shoulders. That wasn't your fault. And you don't need to thank me. This is what family does. But the day was far from over. As they walked back toward the elevator, Judge Thompson from earlier appeared in the hallway. Mr. Rodriguez, do you have a few minutes? I'd like to introduce you to some people. What followed was unlike anything Alex had expected. Judge Thompson led them to a conference room where about 20 courthouse employees had gathered: security officers, clerks, bailiffs, and other staff members. Deputy Williams was there too, nervous but determined. Everyone, Judge Thompson announced, this is Alex Rodriguez. I've asked him to share his perspective on what happened today, and hopefully, we can all learn something from this experience. Alex looked around the room at all the expectant faces. These were good people doing important work, and he didn't want to make anyone feel bad about a situation that had gotten out of hand. First, he began, I want to thank Deputy Williams for his apology earlier. It takes courage to admit when we've made a mistake, and he showed real character by doing that publicly. Williams nodded gratefully, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. What happened today wasn't really about me, Alex continued. It was about a system that sometimes fails people, and how we respond when that happens. Deputy Williams was following his training. Judge Thompson stood up for what was right, and all of you stopped your work to pay attention when it mattered. A young court clerk raised her hand. Mr. Rodriguez, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? I mean, to anyone, not just veterans. Alex thought for a moment. Better communication systems would help. If there had been an easy way to verify my identity or contact the court clerk quickly, none of this would have escalated. But beyond that, I think we all need to remember that everyone who walks through these doors is dealing with something stressful. A little patience and benefit of the doubt can go a long way. An older bailiff spoke up. Sir, I've been working here for 25 years, and I've never seen anyone handle a situation like that with such grace. Most people would have been angry, maybe filed complaints. Being angry wouldn't have helped my brother, Alex replied, and it wouldn't have taught anyone anything useful. We all make mistakes. What matters is how we learn from them and do better next time. Judge Thompson smiled. That's exactly the attitude I was hoping you'd share with us. The discussion continued for another 30 minutes, with staff members asking questions about communication, de-escalation, and treating people with dignity, even in stressful situations. Alex shared stories from his military experience about making quick decisions under pressure and the importance of admitting mistakes quickly when they happened. When the meeting finally ended, Deputy Williams approached Alex privately. Sir, I want you to know that I've been thinking about today all afternoon. I'm going to request additional training on unconscious bias and conflict de-escalation. And I'm going to push for better verification procedures so this doesn't happen to anyone else. That's exactly the right response, Alex said, shaking the officer's hand again. You're going to be an even better officer because of what happened today. 3 months later, the courthouse had implemented several changes based on that day's events. They installed a new computer system that made it easier to verify witness identities quickly. All security staff received additional training on communication and de-escalation techniques. And they started a monthly discussion group where employees could talk about challenging situations and learn from each other's experiences. The video of Alex's gracious response to being handcuffed had gone viral online, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of becoming a source of outrage and division, it became an example of how to respond to injustice with dignity and wisdom. The courthouse began receiving letters from other courts around the country asking about their new training programs. Tommy completed his community service at the same youth center where he'd been volunteering, mentoring teenagers who reminded him of his younger self. He often told them about the day his brother showed him what real strength looked like, not in being angry when you're wronged, but in using difficult moments to make things better for everyone. Alex continued his work with veteran services, but he also started speaking at conferences about leadership, conflict resolution, and the power of responding to challenges with grace instead of anger. He never sought out the spotlight, but he understood that sometimes your response to adversity can inspire others to be better, and Deputy Williams became one of the courthouse's most respected officers, known for his patience, his fairness, and his willingness to listen before making judgments. He often told new security staff about the day he learned the most important lesson of his career from the men he'd wrongly handcuffed. The incident that had started as a simple misunderstanding had become something much more valuable, a reminder that how we treat each other in difficult moments defines who we are as people and as a community. And sometimes, when we choose grace over anger, we can turn our worst moments into our most meaningful ones.